welcome to our show and share session. So, what are these sessions about? These sessions are about giving us an opportunity to share with you what we've been doing over the last sprint, over the last couple of weeks. And it's your opportunity to find out what's going on, ask questions and give feedback. So the ambition for our project is, as you can see on the screen, the main things we're focusing on, the key bits of it are the bits in orange, that we understand that our service is fair, accessible and beneficial to all. So when we looked at the vision for the service, we've got a couple of key quotes from some of the work we did, and particularly the one about everything that everybody does should be geared about preventing homelessness has become key to our vision going forward. So, this demonstrates, looks at the type of level of need that we have for our customers. So we are working from the bottom. We would be working with people with multiple and complex needs in an intensive, multidisciplinary team type way. The middle line is more of the approach that we kind of take to everybody at the moment, giving them support and coaching and creating a shared plan. The idea is to move those people that are more capable up to the top level where they can use more self-sourced type tools to help themselves, so that we can focus more on those people in the middle and those at the bottom. Those sections then on our triangle feed into our roadmap for the service. So the first section at approach, the approach can be any type of approach, so come and walking into the council, a phone call, a referral to lots of different services, be it housing needs, benefits. And then the key bit that we've been focusing on at the moment, and we'll be getting updates on later, is understanding that customer's vulnerability and also looking at the strengths that they have. So from there, that decides what route they will take through our service, with those that are more capable taking the route, which is the light touch, advice and signposting, tools for self-service. Those that need a bit more help, but still have some assets that enable them to progress by themselves. We would be looking at creating a shared plan and checking in with them and nudging. And then we get those at the bottom that we would need more intensive multidisciplinary casework, and that would not just be involving teams in this service, it's teams from services around the council. So underlying what we've been doing with the project and our service every day, we develop some principles, and these we're doing some more work on with team managers, but also they're closely tied to the values that Hackney Council has as a whole. So today's focus. So we will be providing an update on the ever popular single view, information and evidence, the key part of the roadmap that I was talking about just now, the understanding vulnerability, and how that leads us into building a shared plan for customers. I've got one quick plug before I let the experts take over. So you may well have seen the emails that are coming around about. So what we want to run is what we're calling peer power. So we're inviting officers of any level to come and talk about what they do on a daily basis. It might be that people want support with a difficult case. It might just be some people want to share experiences. We appreciate that for housing needs officers dealing frontline with vulnerable people every day, that's very stressful and people can get overloaded, so it's an opportunity to share experiences in that kind of way. Also, we want to tap people for ideas in a relaxed manner and just see what we can do to move the service forward in a slightly different way. As you can see, there will be cakes, but you do have to take your own tea or coffee. It's just to give a fresh what it is. It's on the 5th of March from 2 till 3 in Hackney Town Hall, room 77. If you want any more info or you want to take part, speak to me or email Sabrina. I shall move on. Single view.
So since the last show was out, we've got 2 more teams onboarded. So we've onboarded the Move On team, benefits assessment teams from Team 2 and Team 3, and the Greenhouse team. And we wanted just to share how we're planning to roll out the rest of the teams. So the next cohort will be cohort 3, which will be the remaining benefits teams, lettings, housing supply and TA. And then cohort 4 will be housing advice and the rough sleepers, and then we'll do a mop-up round for cohort 5. If you don't see your team in our list, could you just let me know, and then I can make sure that they get added just so that we don't miss anyone. And then what's next for single view? So we want to check in with our existing users. We know that we've onboarded them, but we just want to make sure that people are actually using it. It's not just been onboarded. We also want to add Hotjar to single view so that we can get a bit of analytics around usage and share that with you guys in terms of feedback. We're going to continue onboarding, as I just mentioned, and we also want to start to liaise with some of other teams like customer services and business support to find out if there's any value that single view can give them, and also so we can think about how we can incorporate roles and permissions in that single view.
What's Hotjar?
Hotjar. So it's a bit like Google Analytics. If you're familiar with Google Analytics, it tells you how many people are using it, how they're using it, and we can kind of see get feedback on it.
So apologies, Chris Caden can't be here today, so you get me instead. So just kind of briefly, last time we showed you we had a sample size of 17, and we've been doing a bit more testing over the last 2 weeks, so we now have a sample size of 25. So kind of using these sort of information and evidence tool to kind of help people signpost and kind of understand their sort of expected waiting time, we can kind of see that afterwards, a lot more people do think it's very unlikely that they're going to be given a sort of council house or go down and find a house through the housing register. So kind of over the next 2 weeks, we're going to have a really, yes.
Did you do this face-to-face with clients so they can see it, or was this done by phone?
Face-to-face,
Okay.
yes. And I believe it was done in hostels and with the neighborhood teams. So kind of over the next 2 weeks, we're going to have a really kind of clear idea of what's the best way we're going to get this out into sort of all the teams, and who's going to kind of be best appropriate to start using it. And we're also going to have a sort of clear idea how we can kind of make it public facing, because we're going to be testing some of our messaging with residents. So we're going to go out into hostels and also downstairs to kind of test some of that messaging to make sure what we're assuming is the correct way that we should be messaging is right. And we're going to kind of be doing the same sort of tests in terms of what's your expected kind of, what are you expecting from the council by kind of going through this website, and then after reading our sort of new content, what they're going to be expecting afterwards. So we're going to have kind of some more clear ideas around that over the next 2 weeks. And then we're going to start to actually make all those changes happen to the website, get the tool that we've shown you, we haven't really shown you since last year, but it kind of tells you your waiting time if you're on the register list. And if you know kind of your bed size and how many beds you need and kind of the rooms and stuff, how can we kind of make that more general so anyone can kind of have a look. So we're going to have, over the next 2 weeks, a really clear understanding of the best way to do that.
I wonder if there's something that can reinforce this message, such as published results of choice-based letting, properties that we put out on choice-based letting.
Yeah.
So I was just looking at something similar, which, for example, they had about 18 properties in the choice in the last bidding session, and it showed the registered dates of successful applicants against the properties that were published. And surprise, surprise, the oldest one, about 26 years,
right,
just last week. Actual published results.
Yeah, cool.
So maybe putting that side by side with this, which is
Would be super impactful, yeah.
and make it look very real.
Yeah. So do you have those data sets around that we could kind of use and see how we best use it with the sort of messaging on the websites?
Before
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So now on to understanding vulnerability.
So yeah, just to recap, understanding vulnerability is kind of at the start of that journey, and it's something that everybody that approaches Hackney Council will kind of have to go through in some form, and we're trying to understand how can we do that in a light touch, middle version, and then like a slightly more intensive version for people that need it. So we're starting small with testing, and really we're trying to understand and prove that we believe that understanding the resident's level of vulnerability at any contact will stop things from escalating, and will free up the time for officers to be able to work with, and the rest of the service to work with those that need the most help. And so what we're trying to understand now is how can we use this to start understanding how do we offer that appropriate level of intervention so that we're not putting everyone on that bottom track and people are getting the right sort of help that they need. So last week we showed you a quick demo of, not last week, 2 weeks ago, we showed you a quick demo of the capturing vulnerability quick text box. And today we're going to show you a sort of iteration on that of another version of capturing vulnerabilities. So I've got my assistant here.
Oh, someone else's computer. Right.
Yeah, so we've tried experimenting with making it slightly more visual than just kind of a text box exercise. So what we've done is we've created these sort of panels which you can click on. And so they kind of give you a visual recap of different types of vulnerability, and we put prompts underneath to help you start thinking about what they might be. And what you can do is then click on those and they will stay highlighted and selected. And then you can add any context around that or any examples that you'd like to do. And that's just a way of kind of visually surfacing some vulnerabilities that we've been testing with benefits officers. So yeah, that's basically it. And then that's currently gets saved onto single view. So we've been testing that with just the benefits team at the minute, with 3 benefits officers in the benefits team. And what we're trying to learn is do the prompts, support officers to ask them questions and build a bigger picture of what's going on for the resident. And is visualising vulnerability categories useful for officers to get up to speed on the resident and their situation? And do officers, and this is a really important thing, do something different or feel that they're able to do something different as a result of surfacing those vulnerabilities? And so we've kind of been following this flow. So we've been encouraging officers to kind of go off the back of any trigger events or any red flags that might be on some of the other systems. So it could be somebody's benefits are ending. And then they need to go a bit deeper in and understanding that context. That could just be going through some of the case notes or maybe speaking to the resident or other people in the service. And then they can use the like vulnerability checklist to kind of really think about what those vulnerabilities are and categorize them and add a bit more context to that. And so what we've been learning from using this tool is that it does seem to be giving officers the sense of having a bit more space to think a bit deeper about customer situation, and they start to think about vulnerabilities they may not have thought about before, just kind of think a bit deeper about that context. We need to think about what those prompts are, and I think when we start talking a bit more about asset space assessments as well, that might be where we try and balance between vulnerabilities and assets at that point, and thinking about highlighting what they are. Making the tool visual seems to be helping officers. Everybody, we kind of gave them the option to use the free text or this version, and every single officer decided to use this one. So there's something in kind of making it visual that helps them really pick out what those vulnerabilities are at the first, in that moment. And that officers are keen to document potential vulnerabilities and not just current ones. So again, this is around kind of capturing something early before it gets to crisis mode, and that's something we need to understand a little bit further. And we need to figure out a way of building a picture of residents' vulnerabilities and strengths. So at the minute, this is just saved in the tool itself. It doesn't go anywhere else. So our next stage is really understanding how do we present that to other people so it doesn't just become an alert, and how do we allow people to feed into that and build a more contextual view of somebody's situation. So next we're going to start looking at assets. So how do we start capturing assets, and do we do that at the same time as surfacing vulnerabilities? And where would this be useful? Where would we want to see that information in the journey when you're dealing with somebody's case? And how do we build this over time and sort of collate that and not make it a big thing that we just focus on their vulnerabilities, but if it needs to be recorded in somewhere for somebody to pick up later, where would we put that? I think that is it. Yep, building a shared plan.
Okay, so building a shared plan. You will remember last time we spoke about documenting someone's vulnerability, and if you document someone's vulnerability, identify that this person is vulnerable, so what? And actually that's only useful if officers are doing something different and taking the steps to start building a shared plan, actions that they can take on behalf of the resident or steps the resident themselves can take, and then this next step as well of actually sharing that with the resident and seeing if that engages them with taking steps to improve their situation. So we've built a very early version of a shared plan, which after this we would love to get you all to have a play on. So we'll set up some laptops and the different computers and you can have a go. The plan itself, you can access it through single view. And at the moment, it's a really simple way to capture a goal. So find you can add a goal and then you can add steps. So plug for Genevieve's tenancy training. And that will add that as an action there. And then there'll be ways to tick those off as well. And so at the moment, this just pastes it as like free text at the bottom there. So you could copy that into the SMS tool, and that's what we've seen officers been doing, sharing it with people via text. You can copy that into an email. But actually one of the next steps that we want to do is share a live read-only version of that web page with residents, and then they can start to tick those off, and we can see if people engage with it.
Okay, this sounds very much like a duplication of the personal housing plan.
Very glad you said that.
Why is it different? Okay.
So the personal housing plan is a great tool, and what we want to see is what's the smallest version of a plan that becomes everyone's responsibility across the whole service to feed into, rather than being something that is like very driven by, this needs to be compliant with HRA. How can we take a step back from that, design a plan that works for everyone to work with residents, but also we need to make sure that it works for housing advice and options, and that this is compliant with HRA as well, and it can be a PHP if it needs to be. So we're trying to build a new, better, more user-friendly version of the personal housing plan.
But if the housing advice officer is already developing the PHP with the client, will they have to then go in and recreate those steps again?
No. So we've been testing it this week in 2 different scenarios. So we've been testing with the same 3 benefits officers who are understanding vulnerability, and then giving them this tool to see, off the back of that, identifying someone as vulnerable, what steps can you take to support them, and what could the resident do? So that's one test we're doing. And then we're testing something completely different with the housing advice team, which is we're going to give you this tool, and instead of creating a personal housing plan in Jigsaw this week, you're going to use this tool and tell us how we can improve it to make sure that this works for you. So we're testing 2 different things. The same tool, can this be a really simple to-do list if someone checks in and you just want to add a couple of actions? But can this also be a full-blown personal housing plan in the future with other officers feeding into it, other services feeding into it when it needs to be? So we're running these 2 experiments, testing different things. With the benefits team, what support can we give to officers to work in this new way? And for housing advice and options, can this be used for a personal housing plan? And actually, will residents engage with it? If we share those actions with them afterwards, is that supporting people to actually take steps?
So Em, are we at the point now where, for instance, James' officers in housing, for those tenants who want to move in somewhere bigger, is there a way in which they could use that to set up, I don't know, a plan for them to activate mutual exchange schemes? Or
at the moment, it's a plan that could be created by anyone in the service. I think the next step for us in the next sprint is seeing how multiple officers, we were going to start in benefits and housing needs rather than housing, could all fit into one plan, but that is absolutely the vision, that someone in housing could create this plan, and that it's that same plan, whoever is interacting with them. So we'd definitely love to talk to you, James.
Where does the plan sit at the moment?
At the moment, it's a stand.
Yeah. Find one, or is it just simply creating it?
At the moment, it's accessed through single view, but it sits separate to that. And we want it to sit separate to that so that in the future, you could have a plan with Hackney, and then if you come and interact with benefits and housing needs, then that would link here, but that it's actually separate and sits with the individual.
Can I also caveat, this has been built in 2 weeks. This is a prototype. We have ambitions that we want everyone to get, but this is a prototype. And the biggest thing we want from everyone here is to tell us how this will be useful. Yes, definitely that is definitely a use case that we're starting to learn. But tell us how this will actually enable you to do your job, and how we can actually engage customers more and have them be an active participant in their plan moving forward. So this is 2 weeks in.
could I please make a bid for you to trial this? No. ordinary housing payments to. I'd like us to trial it with them. So a couple of Adrian's team members do that. So realistically, DHP is a sticking plaster, it's not a solution. So whilst we can't legally put conditions on that we pay you this money but in exchange we want you to do this, we could do it through this kind of mechanism. It's very interesting to see what behavioural response we get as a result, because we pay DHP in short bursts, a bit carrot and stick, so it'd be good to see if this would work with that behaviour to reinforce it.
Yeah, so in the next sprint we're testing this with 5 officers at the moment, but once we've kind of ironed out the bits that are really clunky, like you can't even delete a step at the moment. You know, there's work we need to do before we test it in lots of different scenarios, but we would really like to find more opportunities to test this within the service. Yeah, Dee?
Sort of looking to maybe introduce that on the national credit jigsaw page, which will look at identifying the vulnerability, which will then feed into single view sort of information on. Because it would make sense, because you're going to have approaches from people who aren't necessarily on our benefit system, because they're single, first time they've approached our service. So that could be a way of, instead of having to go to jigsaw and then ultimately going to single view to complete that, to have that page in jigsaw in the first instance, which then visits.
Yeah, I mean, one of the questions we're figuring out is where does this need to sit? I think one of the challenges with it only being in Jigsaw was that would mostly sit with housing advice and options rather than being with everyone across the service.
If you have a course where you can access that page in Jigsaw and then it feeds into single view, you're not having to people don't have the option of going to single view, as well as if you're interviewing someone in the first place to go switch from single view to Jigsaw and updates. It just seems to be.
I think definitely in housing advice and options we need to figure out how this fits into people's current process. So if they're doing an assessment anyway, how does it become really easy to document vulnerabilities and assets and build a plan? But we also need to figure out how it works for everyone else. So this will be something, that's something we can explore. So I'll just speed through the things that we're learning, but we would love everyone to have a play at this, and then we will take some notes on how you think we can improve this to make this work for you in your jobs. So we're learning that through using this tool, officers are doing something different to their usual job role. So there's a quote here from someone in the benefits team who was saying they're encouraged to text the resident and explore the option of breaking down an overpayment into instalments, and that was going above and beyond what they normally did. We've learned that it's really important that we need to give officers the time and space to work in this new way, and that there's real value in celebrating that. So big thank you to Thomas, who's given us the permission to relax targets for officers who are taking part in the benefits team so that they can work in this way this week, and we can see what impact that has. But we're also exploring, are there other ways that we can start to celebrate this work, the steps that people are taking to go above and beyond your duty, taking steps to prevent homelessness. So we're asking team managers to share some stories that come out of how officers are working this way. So I just wanted to share this little story with you here first. So there's a customer who's moved onto universal credit from housing benefit, and during that transition they received an overpayment of £350 and received an invoice from the overpayments team for that. So the officer identified that this was a vulnerable mother with a young child and on very low income. So he tried to phone the resident to discuss breaking that down into smaller payments, but she wasn't engaging, as you might imagine. She didn't really want to speak to anyone at the council. So he used the SMS tool to send her a text message and offer the opportunity to break that down into £10 weekly instalments, as well as giving her the details of the overpayments team to arrange that. And then use the shared plan to create an action to follow up with the overpayments team themselves. So I think that was a real success story that we wanted to celebrate this week. So big thank you to Thomas for giving us the space and permission to try out this stuff.
I'd be interested to know who was the landlord on that place. Was it a council tenant or a private tenant? Was there rent arrears? Was there anything else we could have done as well? Just be interested to know.
Yeah. We're also learning.
I'd also like to know over the long term if there's an improvement rate of response if we send a text message, because there's no point sending text messages if they also don't respond. So it'd be interesting to know, what percentage do respond to those classes.
I've been told that because we've got this pilot, the pre-long message, obviously it's got this long message about it's a pilot, people don't, they want to get past that, forget that, just do the message, don't need to send it's a private.
I've been tracking it and we've had quite a lot of engagement from residents. Often when you're up there asked to confirm things, just as simple, okay, we're getting back. So we're tracking engagement with SMS at the minute.
And I will say that when I'm trying to get a hold of people to make them an offer, I'm finding that a phone call or an email is getting no response, and I'll text and say, look, this is why I'm trying to get a hold of you. And I get a call. And then I know if I'm not getting, then I've got to mail something that generates some sort of further.
Yeah, which is great. And this is what we're learning, that staff think that SMS is the preferred way to contact residents and follow up. Then what we want to test next is resident engagement with this. And then what we're learning through housing advice officers testing this, I think we've got one person testing it this afternoon and two appointments that we're testing in tomorrow. But when we were talking about building a plan, it seems that all housing advice officers, let me know if this is correct, but have different ways of collecting actions that you regularly use. So one officer was talking about, because you're under so much time pressure in that appointment, I have a kind of bank of actions and resources and links that are my go-tos and that I copy and paste and share. And so what we're really interested in doing is creating a bit of a knowledge bank and starting to pool all of that information together, because we found that some people, particularly who aren't creating personal housing plans at the moment, found it difficult to make that jump to thinking about actions they could take. So can we start to pool all of that knowledge from across the service together and give everyone some ideas and inspiration of steps that we could take as Hackney to support that person. So what's next? Test how multiple officers can feed into a single shared plan, starting in the service but absolutely with ambition to go more widely than that. Build a read-only version for residents to see if they engage with it. If they're sent a link, do they open it? Do they start to tick things off? We can actually measure some of these things and start to collect information and ideas for a service-wide knowledge bank. Cool. That was so much information. Thanks, Claire.
I know, I'm sorry, but my name gets carried away. Okay, so again, caveat, it's a prototype, and the reason why we've got strategically laptops placed around the show and tell today is because this is enough of us talking at you. We want to hear your thoughts and we want to get your feedback about what's useful. So we also want to be mindful about the fact, so thanks for some of the feedback, that we are actually measuring change and whether this is actually an improvement to the current processes. So around behaviour and are we changing behaviour? Are we actually supporting customers to play an active role? So making sure we're very mindful about that along the way, because we want this to be a truly shared plan. We don't want it to just be us doing extra work for customers and they don't engage with it. So the biggest thing for us is for the next part of the development is making sure that we're sharing it with customers and measuring whether they're engaging with it, and actually being able to hopefully in the next show and tell be able to show you some stats around that about are we actually moving the needle. So we have we'll set up some more, but we have two scenarios. So we've got some shared plans already set up. We want you to have a play, pull it apart, be brutal. We can take it on the chin. But tell us your honest feedback, where would this be useful? How would this help you work with your customers that you're working with? And what would actually be most useful for customers as well? So how can we think about both what we need to be doing, but also what the customer needs to be doing? And play around with it, add actions, tell us what could be a good use of the shared plan. So there's two scenarios. One, we want to support the customer to find their own private rented accommodation. And the second one, we want to support the customer to get out of arrears and find a stable job. So with those two scenarios in mind, what could we be supporting the customer to do? What should we be doing ourselves? And how can we create a shared plan together? We can also start thinking about, if you want to, what if other people are involved in this, so not just one officer? What if I can refer this to potentially another part of the service? Another part of another support service out in Hackney? How can we actually create a holistic plan for this customer to help them play an active role in strengthening their future? Does that sound okay? We're going to make you work. So we'll set up the laptops.